Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Hollis Thomas sat by the small backyard pool and watched his wife Tiffany and their best friend frolic in the surf of the Gulf of Mexico. In the past days, when he watched them play together in the surf, he also looked at his location and almost burst with pride. He was thinking about the culmination of their childhood dreams. They realized most of their dreams because they escaped from the cold, dreary winters of their hometown in the north, which they considered cold and cool, and lived the dream in sunny Florida. Now, on this day, he didn't think about the fact that they had run away from their hometown for this piece of paradise. Now, watching the pair play, he was upset again, remembering some rumors that began in his school years and continue to this day. He completely ignored his pleasant place and concentrated on what was happening on the sand and in the surf. Until the middle of last week, he could honestly say that he loved Tim and Tiff more than anyone in the world. Over the years, he trusted them with his life, his happiness, even his soul. They were almost like one. If one of them was sad or unhappy, they were all sad. If one of them was hurt, then everyone was hurt. Now he realized that the trust and love he once had for them were misplaced. Hollis, Tiff, and Tim met on their first day of high school, when they were assigned to the same group. Somehow, they immediately became friends and formed a bond that lasted until high school and college graduation for him and Tiff. Timothy was a luxury slacker. He was a typical beach bum even before he had a beach where he could practice his art. He had no ambitions. He always dressed up as a surfer dude and spoke the language of beach bums. His every sentence was filled with surfer and toker slang. Hollis had never seen Tim use illegal substances, but he was an expert in the use and abuse of weed and alcohol. Like many other young men who behaved like him, there was something about him that women liked. They flocked to him like bees to honey. He was a handsome, tanned young man who knew everything there was to say to a woman. Tim could put almost any woman he wanted to bed, and it seemed like he wanted them all. Until recently, Hollis had thought he was holding back his impulses when it came to his best friend's wife, but now he knew otherwise. The three friends graduated from high school together and applied to colleges together. They considered only those colleges that were located in Florida. The location of a college or university was more important than its reputation or the degree they could get there. They were all accepted to the same college and settled down together when they began their higher education. It took Tim only one semester to drop out and declare that college was not for him. He moved to the beaches near Fort Myers, Florida, and for the rest of his friends' college careers, lived hand in hand, seeing them almost every weekend and almost all summer. While Hollis and Tiff were in college, Timothy worked part-time at and near the beach. He worked for a pool sales company, local beach companies, and a local rental agency. For some reason, that's where he shone. He could have rented the sand to an Arab. Hollis decided that he was so successful because tourists liked his dude surfer demeanor when he persuaded them to rent or buy sand. Hollis's employer owned a beach rental company, with a small retail store attached to it, as well as a larger tool and equipment rental point where Hollis worked. The store where Tim worked mainly sold used beach equipment, but also sold everything that could be used on the beach, from sun loungers to swimsuits, sunscreens, drinks, and so on. In college, Tiffany and Hollis majored in business. Tiffany has a degree in marketing. Hollis had a double specialization, management information systems and business management. After graduating from college, they both managed to find jobs quickly. Hollis began working in the equipment rental business with Tim's employer, quickly rising to store manager and second in command after the owner. Tiffany got a job selling clothes in a coastal boutique and quickly rose to assistant manager. All three friends worked half a mile apart and saw each other every day. Hollis and Tim, who worked for the same employer, sometimes saw or talked to each other several times during the day. Tim often told Hollis that he and Tiff had lunch together. Their businesses were on the same block, and they even spent most of their breaks together. Rumors about Tim and Tiff started circulating again, but Hollis ignored them again. After all, they had all been friends since childhood and he trusted them. Tiffany had already dated Tim when they were younger, and she didn't think he was fit to be a husband. After all, she rejected him and married Hollis, so he had no reason to worry, did he? Apart from women and everything that is done on the beach, Tim had one real passion in life. He loved Mustang cars. If the conversation turned to cars, he first of all talked about the Ford Mustang. His first car was a Mustang, as were all the subsequent ones. Finally, he managed to save up enough money to buy a new Mustang, but it wasn't just a Mustang. He bought a Shelby, ruby red metallic with black accents. When he wasn't riding on the beach, his free time was spent cleaning, grooming, and modifying his first love, the Mustang. Tiffany was the first to ride in his new car, and subsequently she was seen riding with him many times. Hollis recalled the good times when he and his two best friends went on trips, went hiking, or just spent time together. Tiffany was always there for both of them, but she was just his. She was only Tim's friend, she said. Now it seemed that she was more than a friend. She never said she was a friend with privileges, but obviously she was and still is. It was only last week that he finally got a slap in the face from her disrespect and betrayal. He finally found out that the rumors that had been circulating for the previous years were true. Hollis almost wished he hadn't volunteered to deliver another set of rented scaffolding to the construction site the day he found out about her betrayal. He was bored, and the tenant said he urgently needed to get the scaffolding, so Hollis told his boss he would deliver it. If not for that, he might have remained blissfully unaware for a long time. He would never have known that the rumors were true. He felt his stomach clench with anger again as he remembered what he had seen watching what he now knew were not so innocent events in the surf. How could he be so blind? Everything was very clear now. The day his life turned to shit was a great day. Business was slow. It was Tuesday, so when the store received an order, he told Mr. Wilson that he would deliver the scaffolding instead of asking their driver to work late. This not only saved them the overtime they would have paid the driver, but also saved him from working in the store for an hour or so, and also pleased a good customer. It was a winning situation, but in the end, he lost. He decided to return to the store on the beach road, the one that passed by Tiffany and Timothy's workplaces. He walked past the small building, almost a hut, where Tim worked, just in time to see Tiffany meet Tim outside the door in a heated kiss. His hands went under her loose blouse and caressed her breasts for a while. Then he hurried after her out the door. When she entered the building, he put his hand under her skirt, and she turned around, smiling and giggling. She leaned forward slightly and grabbed Tim's arm, continuing to walk backwards into the building. As soon as the door closed behind them, she pulled Tim to her for another long kiss. There was no doubt that this time, she was the initiator. Tim quickly hung a closed for lunch sign on the door and followed Tiffany deeper into the building. Tiffany was laughing and pulling Tim's hand. Hollis quickly drove his new F-150 into the parking lot next to Tim's Mustang. He almost ran to the store and looked into the building. He couldn't see anything. The lights were off, the door was locked, and no one was in sight. This meant that they must be in the storage room, or had left the building through the door of the storage room. Hollis moved to the back of the building and pushed the trash can under the tall, faded window. When he climbed onto the tank, he could barely pull himself up to see part of the room. He could hear voices, but he couldn't make them out. He quickly jumped down, put a couple of pallets under the trash can, and climbed back on top of it. Now he could see more of the room, and his world was over. Tiffany was lying on waist-high drawers. Her blouse and bra were open. Her gorgeous breasts were on display for Tim to grope, which he did. Hollis took his phone out of his pocket and took a few pictures, then walked away from the trash can and began to move away from the building. He was seething with anger. Thoughts were spinning in his head, many of which he later did not remember. He was devastated, broken, abandoned to his fate, as only can happen in such or similar circumstances. His perfect life was shattered in a few painful moments of a magnificent day. When he returned to work, his boss realized that something was wrong, but Hollis refused to discuss it with him. He just said, "I just realized that things are not always what you expect or think they are. This afternoon I discovered that I was wrong about what I thought I knew. Now I have to reconsider all my views on life." Hollis shrugged off the memories of the past week and continued to watch his wife and former best friend wrestling and caressing each other on the waves. He almost cried listening to Tiffany's girlish, happy screams and giggles and Tim's deep laughter. He watched and made plans, then discarded them to make a new one. Thinking, he looked around the house and yard. He will miss this place, perhaps more than Timothy, and almost as much as Tiffany. At least all they would have lost was the lease. Now he was glad that they didn't have enough savings for the down payment and they agreed to a lease agreement with a subsequent purchase. Hollis was still going over the plans in his mind when Tiffany ran into the yard, beaming, holding Tim's hand and dragging him along with her. She was funny and flirtatious, one of the things that attracted Hollis to her many years ago. He liked her sparkling personality, her constant good mood, and loving, pleasant character. He knew now that he should have doubted her devotion to him when she continued to show these traits to others after they got engaged and married. He just convinced himself that it didn't mean anything, that it was just her character. Now he knew that it wasn't just her personality, or maybe it was. She was a liar and a flirt. When Tiffany got closer to Hollis, she stopped and looked at him, still slightly out of breath from the previous session. Only then did she drop Tim's hand. "Honey, why do you look so sour? It's a beautiful day and we're all together. Why do you look so depressed?" She leaned forward and gave him a quick kiss on the lips, which he managed to partially evade. "Oh, nothing you don't know, Tiff. I was just thinking about last week and the problem I found at work. I will deal with it soon and decide, and I hope that I will return to normal life. Why are you in such a good mood this afternoon?" Tiffany smiled slightly and looked at Tim before answering. Hollis thought he saw something more than friendship in that look. To be honest, he knew it was the same look she always gave Tim, but this time he understood its true meaning. "Well, we're all together, and Tim and I had a lot of fun swimming, and now we're ready to eat well and be quiet with each other for a while. What are you going to cook for us this evening?" she said. "Oh, have I been chosen as a cook for the group again today? It seems that I am often chosen for this position. I even have to cook when we meet at Tim's. It doesn't seem right to me, but to you? Oh, well, it really doesn't matter. I'm afraid I didn't think about it because I was busy with my own problems. I think you and Tim will have to figure something out. Or maybe we can just make some sandwiches together." "Oh, Hollis, how can you? You always cook good food when we get together. It's part of the fun on weekends to watch you cook delicious food for us and then eat it at sunset. I can't believe you were just sitting there staring into space and not eating. What should we do now?" Her eyes flashed. She grabbed Tim's arm, then turned to Hollis and said, "I know. You can cool the wine and set the table, and Tim can take me for a ride in his Shelby. We'll buy something to take away and eat here on the terrace. I've heard about an amazing new restaurant in this city, and this will be the perfect time to try it." Tiffany rushed into their bedroom and quickly changed into a sundress and sandals. When she returned to the terrace, she smiled. "Come on, Tim. Let's hit the road." She grabbed his arm and pulled Tim toward the front door and the parked cars. Her eyes were shining as she turned to Hollis. "We probably won't be back for an hour and a half, dear. We have to give them time to cook after we arrive. I'll call you when we start coming back." Hollis froze in shock when he saw the front door close. He heard the Shelby purr, and then there was the rustle of tires as Tim got into it. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Of course, this had happened before, but it was more egregious, or perhaps he was just looking at it from a new perspective. Many times after Tim and Tiff wrestled and did handwork together, she or Tim would find an excuse for them to run errands together. Until now, Hollis had never thought about it. They've been doing this kind of thing since high school. Hell, then he and Tiff would sometimes go off and leave Tim alone. Of course, they had never or almost never made love, as he now suspected Tiff and Tim had done. Of course, now that they were married, they didn't have to run away if they were so stressed that they needed to make love. They just apologized and went to the bedroom or waited until Tim left and they went to bed. Hollis sighed and returned to his chair on the patio. He took a glass and a bottle of Balvienne with him. He made no attempt to cool the wine or arrange the plates and silverware. He didn't even move an hour and a half later when a giggling Tiffany called and said they were on their way home. When the lovers returned almost 2 hours later, he felt no pain, and except for going out into the yard to pee, during their entire absence he did not get up from his chair and did nothing but drink. Tiffany was laughing and chatting when she and Tim walked through the front door. They walked noisily through the house and into the kitchen. When she came out onto the terrace, her chatter stopped, as did herself. Tiffany looked at the still unfilled table and turned to Hollis. "Hollis, what have you been doing? I thought you were going to cool the wine and set the table while we were gone. It looks like you haven't even moved since we left. What the hell is wrong with you today? Hurry up and set the table so we can eat. We're hungry." Hollis looked at Tiffany sadly, but did not comment on it in any way. Her disheveled appearance spoke for itself. Her hair was tousled and her lips were plump and red. It was obvious that she wasn't wearing a bra. He was sure she was wearing a bra when they left. Somehow, during a takeaway dinner trip, her usually tidy appearance turned into a well-worn one. Tiff didn't pay attention to Hollis's sad look. She just continued to scold him for not being ready for the arrival of the guests. While Tiff was talking to Hollis about his failures, Tim was unloading food on the table. He didn't want to or couldn't look Hollis in the eye. Hollis looked at each of them, then got up and walked into the kitchen without comment. When he returned, he had only his own plate and silver in his hands. He quickly filled it with admittedly great-smelling food and sat down at the table. He had already started eating when Tiffany burst into the house for her and Tim's cutlery and plates. When she returned, she cursed him again for not setting the table for everyone. Hollis looked up at her. "Listen to me, I'm tired and hungry. You could both go to the kitchen to get your plates. It wouldn't have taken you that much effort to bring your dishes and plates here, so I let you do it yourself." He turned back to the food. After he filled his plate, Tim sat down across from Hollis and ate a few bites and then said, "Dude, this is all so unbelievable. Why do you treat us like this? You didn't cook, and then you got arrogant after we arrived with good food and refused to even help serve it. This is so unlike you, man. We're brothers. You're going to have to help, man. To help, you know? You have such a nice woman there, dude, and the fact that you didn't help her is a complete insult, you know?" Hollis looked at Tim and felt anger flare up in him. He looked at Tiffany guiltily, but then returned his attention to Tim. Tiffany stared at her plate and tried not to notice the two men at the table. Hollis said, "Well, Tim, I really don't understand why you care what I do in my own house, you know, dude. I know you're used to me paying for everything when we're together, running errands and dragging everyone around. But now everything's going to change. I intend to rest on weekends like you and Tiff. It means that I stopped doing everything for you, and you have to start pulling your own burden, dude." Tiffany gasped and looked at Hollis in surprise. Hollis looked at his wife. "What? Do you have a problem with that, honey?" "Well, it's simple. Well, you know Tim doesn't earn enough to pay his expenses when we do things together. He barely earns enough to pay for the car and rent. We've always taken care of each other. Why are you trying to change the situation now?" "Well, let me think. We are all adults here. We all work and are responsible for ourselves and our actions." "Am I right?" Tiff whispered. "Yes." "Then it means that if we are together, we have to help each other, and when we are apart, we have to pay for ourselves. Usually, if someone is in the house as a guest, they at least offer help, even if they are not expected to do so or provide food for the host of the house. I noticed that wherever we gather, you and Tim play and have fun, and I cook, serve, and clean the food. I am also expected to spend our money on food. I don't believe that we have an equal relationship here, and I'm tired of the inequality and injustice in the relationship. Needless to say, the evening turned into a continuous bitterness, accusations, and resentments. Hollis wasn't ready to tell the other two why he decided to take a tough stance on friendship relationships, but they knew he was upset about something. Over the next 2 weeks, he spent as much time as possible watching Tiffany and Timothy. Every week, he found them kissing and caressing many times. Twice in 1 week and 3 times in the next, he received even more photos of them making love during work hours. By his calculations, Tiff and Tim spent more time making love to each other than he and Tiff did before he caught them. On the Friday of the second week, Hollis entered the owner's office. "Sir, I've been doing some calculations in my spare time for the last week or so. I think we can significantly increase profits if we close the store and the beach rental point and let Tim go." Mr. Tompkins stared at Hollis and frowned before saying, "I thought Tim was your friend, Hollis. Why are you recommending that we close his store and fire him? There are times when we need another employee at the rental center. Isn't that a better choice than just closing another store and firing your friend?" "In some cases, I think that would be the best solution, but in this case, it would be counterproductive, sir." Hollis leaned forward and handed Mr. Tompkins a copy of his figures before continuing the discussion. "I have several reasons for my recommendation, sir. The first and most important thing is the store itself. During the busiest months of the tourist season, it is constantly busy and makes a good profit. However, in the off-season, it does not even pay for operating expenses. If we had used the store only from mid-April to mid-September, we would have received 89% of its annual profit. I suggest you either rent out the building or sell the building and the plot. If you do not do this, I suggest that you operate the store only from April to September. I have given the numbers for each option. If you sell or lease the building, we will be able to save part of the site for a mobile store, which will work only for these 5 months and bring much more profit to the business, taking into account rental income. The sale of the building would also contribute to the growth of the company's profits, as it would allow us to purchase other equipment for rent or increase interest income. Finally, I believe that Tim's continued work will have a negative impact on business due to his personal life and work habits. Hollis leaned forward and handed the envelope to Mr. Tompkins before continuing to speak. I discovered that on an unknown number of days, Tim closed the business during business hours while making love to a woman in a warehouse. Thus, he is guilty of stealing from the business because he continued to receive a salary for these closures. Over the past 2 weeks, I have recorded 7 cases where the store was closed for almost an hour in the middle of the day. These closures were in addition to his allowed lunch break. These unauthorized closures have had a negative impact on the business due to potential unknown losses in sales and rents. Besides, I can't keep working with him. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, sir, but if he's left at work, I'll look for a job elsewhere. What? I can't believe you're going to do this. Why? You, Tim, and Tiffany were friends. Yes, you were closer than friends for most of your lives. Yes, it probably was, at least outwardly. I recently discovered that everything is not as I thought. Tim is definitely not my friend, and Tiffany won't be my wife for long. This envelope contains the reason why I made these statements, sir. Mr. Tompkins frowned and, after giving Hollis a hard look, opened the envelope. When he saw the first photo, he inhaled sharply. He quickly scanned the other photos, then looked up at Hollis. Son, I just don't know what to say. I understand why you don't want to work with Tim. Hell, I even understand why you're saying Tiffany won't be your wife for long. But what surprises me is your desire to close the beach rental business. I'm wondering if this is a smart business decision or revenge. Hollis looked at his boss and sighed. Well, sir, I was afraid you'd think that. I'd be lying if I said that what happened between Tiff and Tim didn't affect my decisions, but I think any accountant would agree with my recommendation. I suggest that our accounting firm double-check my figures, but I'm sure they make sense for the business. This store is not profitable on an annual basis, and the funds associated with it can be better used elsewhere. My calculations show that this store brings you, on average, about $600 per month. The rent for the building, or a percentage of the sale price when investing, will far exceed these figures. The accounting firm agreed with Hollis's assessment of the real estate by the sea. In fact, their numbers were even more severe than Hollis's. After everything was accounted for, the continued operation of the business resulted in a net loss for the company because Hollis forgot to include depreciation and insurance in his figures. The store was closed and Tim was fired. On the day of his dismissal, Hollis instructed his lawyer to hand Tiffany the divorce papers. In the morning, he moved from his rented house to a small apartment located a few minutes' walk from his work. He was working at the store again when Tiffany called him. He debated whether to answer the phone, but then decided that he needed to end the unpleasant conversation. When he said, "Hi, Tiffany, what do you need?" He expected to hear her rant about divorce right away. Instead, she replied, "Did you know about this mess? Why didn't you tell us that Brad, Mr. Tompkins, was going to close the store on the shore and fire Tim? I thought we were all friends. How could you let him do that? Couldn't you at least persuade him to transfer Tim to the store where you work? He had not paid for his apartment and car before, and now he has no way to pay. I told him he could move in with us until he gets better. Can you take an early day off and help him move?" "No, I don't think so. Mr. Tompkins and I went into the store several times during business hours and found it closed. Tim was nowhere to be found. The store wasn't even making a profit, so he decided to close it. As for helping Tim move, there's no way I'm going to agree, and now I have to go." About 30 minutes later, Tiffany called again. Hollis picked up the phone this time, and it would have been better if he hadn't. She started screaming as soon as she heard his voice. "Hollis, how could you? You got Tim fired, didn't you? And now you're divorcing me. How could you do that? We've been together forever, and suddenly you leave us and cut us out of your life just like that. Well, Tiff, how could you cheat on me? How could you use Tim and not expect me to leave him and your pathetic ass?" "What? I didn't cheat on you. I've never cheated and I never will. What gave you this idea?" "Maybe because I have photos of you and Tim making love? Maybe because I saw you kissing him and letting him play with your ass? Maybe that gave me the idea that you were cheating?" "Hollis, I have never, ever allowed other men or women to make love to me. Not once." "Then what were you doing when Tim used you?" "Well, I guess so. But I prefer to think that we made love like you and I." "Oh, Hollis, how could you—" "Hollis, I thought you understood. Hollis, we've always been just us. The three of us. We've always been together. You know, you've known since elementary school that I love you both to death. You both told me and each other that you love us. Hollis, you always knew that Tim and I had something special, just like you and me. You certainly won't try to divorce me because of Tim. Honey, I love you. I love Tim. I always knew I'd be married to you. Tim needs us to keep living, and we need Tim to be happy too. If you loved Tim enough to make love to him, why did you marry me? Well, you were more stable. You'll be able to support the children better when we have them. Tim can't even pay his keep, but he's special. The three of us are a great team, and we'll be so happy with the kids when they show up. Tim can teach them to live and love life. I can be a mother and raise them, and you can teach them responsibility and work ethic. Don't you see? What we have is a perfect whole. When Tim has a little flaw, you can make up for it, and we'll all live better just like we do now. No, Tiffany, I don't see. I guess I've never seen what's really going on. Goodbye, Tiffany. Hollis hung up and stood fuming. He was so angry that he was shaking and his face was red. This fool practically admitted that she had always made love to both of them and even helped pay Tim's bills with their income. Damn, how could he have been so wrong, so blind? Unsurprisingly, Tiffany immediately invited Tim to move into the house and live with her. But even then, Tim couldn't pay for the car. 2 months after the breakup, Tim wandered into the store late at night. Hollis walked around the counter and met him at the door, about to kick him out. Before he could say anything, Tim declared, "Dude, you have to help me. They're trying to take my car. I can't let them do that. Tiff made the payment last month, but now we don't have the money. Can you give me a loan?" "What? You use my wife and prove that you've never been my friend, and now you come here and ask me to lend you money for your damn car? Get your ass out of here before I beat the shit out of you." Wow, dude. What's with the bad vibes, man? Of course I nailed your old lady, but you nailed mine too. I mean, she was with both of us, you know? We both thought you knew that and were taking it easy. But this is a completely different matter. We've always been buddies and had each other's backs. I really need your help, man. Hollis smiled. You know, maybe I can take care of you after all, Tim. Give me some time and we'll go to your bank and figure it out. Tim brightened and smiled. He patted Hollis on the back. Righteous dude. I knew I could count on you. When they arrived at the bank where the loan for Tim's car was issued, they asked to talk to the loan officer. When they sat down, she asked how they could help, and Hollis said, I understand you have a loan for Tim Reading's Mustang. He said he was overdue and you were going to return the car. I agreed to take over the payment so that you wouldn't have to pick up his car. Do you mind? Well, I can't say. Tim intervened here. Stop, dude. I didn't say I was going to give up my car. I just wanted to take out a loan to pay for it. Hollis looked at the loan officer. Excuse us for a moment, please. I want to explain everything to Tim. Tim, all I do is apply for a loan and a car in my name so that I can make payments and we can take care of the car here. I'll take over the payments and make sure the bill is paid and you won't have any more credit problems. Tim relaxed and smiled. Oh, cool, man. Exactly. Let's do this. The credit inspector took Hollis's data and checked his credit worthiness. When she finished, she smiled. I don't see any problem with you taking over the payments on Mr. Redding's car, Mr. Thomas. I can also make sure that you apply for new ownership in the state. Let me fill out some forms and get some signatures and we'll take care of everything. She quickly got up and went into the paperwork room. When the loan officer left, Tim sat up straighter and turned to Hollis. Dude, what does it mean to change ownership in your name? I told you, I can't lose my car. Hey, just calm down, Tim. Since I'm taking over the payments for you, they have to do it so that everything is legal. You know the banks and the government. This is their path or highway. Tim relaxed again. Yes, damn it. I still don't understand anything they do or say. I was just worried about my car. We're fine. About 45 minutes later, Tim handed over his car to Hollis, and Hollis paid the overdue amount. When they got into Hollis's car, Tim behaved like the old Tim. All Hollis could do was not to hit him on the head. When they returned to the store, Tim jumped out of the car and almost ran to the driver's side. He smiled and said, Hey, man, I bought some killer weed yesterday. Let's go score a couple of cigarettes and celebrate. I have a bag in the car. I can't right now, Tim. I need to finish the paperwork on your car. Oh, cool. I thought we were done with this. Yes. Hurry up so I don't lose her. See you later, dude. Tim lit a cigarette before pulling out of the parking lot. Hollis soon followed him, and then turned into the traffic police to finish transferring the rights to Tim's car. Hollis was so pleased with his trick that he almost danced. He quickly completed the transaction and paid the fee, and then left the building smiling. 2 weeks later, Hollis received the final divorce papers in the mail. As it should be in a divorce, it was pretty painless. Tiffany and he earned almost the same, so there was no question of any content. The savings were minimal. They kept their cars and personal property in their possession. No fuss, no hassle. He took his name off the lease of the small seaside house they loved so much and was free of her, although he missed this house. Late Saturday night, after receiving the decree in the mail, or rather early Sunday morning, Hollis rode one of the rented beach bikes to his old house. He unlocked the door carefully and quietly, thanked the stars that Tiff did not change the locks and did not ask for the key back, and calmly entered the house. He smiled when he saw what he expected to see. The keys to the Mustang were on the table. He quickly took them and started to leave when another thought occurred to him. I wonder where another set of keys is. He went to the closet where Tiff always kept her purse and looked inside it. Bingo. There was a Mustang keychain on her keychain. He took it and left the house as quietly as he had entered. Hollis walked over to the Mustang in the driveway and opened the door. Now came the dangerous part. He had to get him away as quickly and quietly as possible. She was a noisy fool who needed to be wound up and taken away. He grimaced as the engine started, but damn it, he sounded great. As quietly as possible, Hollis pulled out of the driveway and drove down the street, heading for his house. He will return in his truck and pick up the bike he rode as soon as he gets home, and then he will wait for the fireworks. After he finished his lunch on Sunday, Hollis received a phone call from a frustrated Tim. He spoke so fast that Hollis could hardly understand him. "Hollis, dude, it's a complete mess, man. Some dude got away in my car. You have to help, man. What should I do?" "Calm down, Tim. Just relax. I can't do anything for you." In the end, Hollis just hung up on Tim, who was still not calmed down, and sat down in his chair, smiling. By this time, Tim had got a part-time job at a pool manufacturing company. Over the next week, Hollis tried to drive the Mustang past the address of the company when Tim had to leave work. Finally, on Thursday, he arrived just as Tim was getting into Tiffany's car to drive home after work. Hollis smiled to himself and honked the horn as he drove past the two lovers. He could hear Tim's hate cry, even over the hum of the engine. He accelerated a little more and disappeared into traffic before Tiff could get back outside. In the middle of the morning the following Saturday, Hollis was cleaning the Shelby when a patrol car pulled up in the parking lot behind his car. The officer approached him and asked, "Are you Hollis Thomas?" "Yes, officer, it's me. Is there a problem?" "Is this your car, sir?" "Yes, mine." Hollis laughed and continued, "Well, not really, I guess." The officer stiffened and looked at Hollis. "Actually, this is my car in the bank. Do you have a registration and insurance certificate, please, sir?" "Of course. Give me a minute." Hollis opened the door, rummaged in the glove compartment, and took out the required documents. Handing them over to the patrolman, he asked again, "Is there a problem, officer?" "I'll be a minute, sir." The officer returned to his patrol officer and checked the information. He returned a few minutes later and handed the documents to Hollis. "We have received a statement from Mr. Timothy Reading that his car was stolen. The car identification number he gave us matches this one. He said he saw you driving the car and wanted us to return it. Registration records and DMV records confirm that you are the owner of this car. Can you shed some light on this question, sir?" Hollis smiled and leaned against the car in the shade. "Well, Mr. Redding owned this car, but he couldn't make payments. I agreed to take over the payments to keep his credit history clean. We went to the bank and I took over his loan and ownership of the car. I really don't know what his problem is, but I suspect he was high when we made the deal or when he made the report to you, sir. We used to be friends, but when my wife and I divorced, he cast his lot with her, and I'm afraid we're not as close as we used to be. I allowed him to use this car for 2 weeks before picking it up from his house. I figured 2 weeks was enough for him to find another means of transportation." "I see. So you're saying that he's addicted to illegal substances and is trying to use the police to create problems because of your divorce?" "No, sir. I do not know how he feels about our divorce, and I do not care. All I said was that illegal substances might explain his loss of memory about selling a car." "Very well, sir. I'm sorry to bother you. On Sunday afternoon, Hollis was lying by the pool when Tiffany and Tim burst in on him. Before he could get up, they knocked over his chair and threw it on the hot concrete. Tim said, 'Dude, why did you take my car? I need the wheels back, man. Give me the keys.' 'Hey, you came to me and begged for help.' I agreed because we were friends and I felt a little guilty about your problems. You handed the car over to me so that it wouldn't be taken away. Now I have a good car, even if it's not an F-154X4. Damn, it's a real magnet for girls. And it helps, you know? In a sense, this is fair. Each of us still has a sweet car we just exchanged. I got a Mustang for my wife. You know, I think I won this deal. At least I don't have to worry about the Mustang cheating on me and leaving with some other man without my permission. Tiffany screamed and then stood and cried softly. Tim stood for a moment, looking at Hollis. Man, it's totally cold, man. Hollis looked at them. Yes, that is. Now get out of here before I call the cops. I don't want to see any of you anymore.